Welcome to The Interview, where we share inspiring career stories and advice from experts and thought leaders on any and all topics, everything from college admissions tips to the latest medical and self-care advice. I'm host Leslie Heaney, and I'm excited to share these compelling stories with you. I hope you'll learn something new and hopefully share a few laughs along the way. Today on The Interview, I am beyond excited to have Eleanor Acquavella joining us. Eleanor is going to offer a rare glimpse into the world of high-end art dealing and collecting. She runs the world-renowned Acquavella Art Gallery alongside her father, legend Bill Acquavella, and her brothers, Nick and Alex. Founded in 1921 by her grandfather, Nicholas, dealing in old masters in the Italian Renaissance, the gallery expanded dramatically under the leadership of Bill Acquavella with his foray into Impressionist and modern art. Today, the gallery is over 100 years old, specializing in 19th, 20th, and 21st century works, and is regarded as one of the most distinguished and respected art galleries in the world. Eleanor, who's one of the finest and funniest women that I know, is carrying on this amazing legacy with her family. And now, without further ado, Eleanor Dejoux. Anyway, we're about a foot away from each other, staring at each other with headphones on. So just want to give everybody who's listening a visual on that. But Eleanor is here today to talk about her work in the art world, Acquavella Galleries, your family's business. How did you get involved in that? And we're only laughing because I should say at the start of this, or maybe you heard that when we were recording, that Eleanor said, well, you can say your own line or your own response to my question.
Well, I said other than being born. So, yes, there were a few other steps that got me to my current career other than it's a family business. So one of my first jobs was a summer intern at the Phillips Collection, which is a small, really amazing museum in Washington, D.C. And I lived there with some friends one summer. And I went to work for the then director, Charlie Moffat. And he was actually I shouldn't say actually, but he was a great, great boss and a great sort of mentor to me. And he sort of gave me the confidence to think that maybe I could go into the art business, and not just because I had a place that I knew would hire me, but because maybe I had an okay eye or a good opinion about something. And so he helped me sort of curate a show with him at the time. And that was sort of my first taste of really enjoying looking at art and trying to see the different ways that you can look at something. After that, I worked at Sotheby's after I graduated from college.
So were you in college then? You were interning?
I was in college. I was I think I was a sophomore. I was going to my junior year of college.
And were you studying art history in college?
I was studying art history in college. I went to a liberal art school called Denison in Ohio. So it was a very generalized art history education. It was not, we did not go in depth, particularly until really our senior year. And even then it was pretty general. So the Phillips Collection was the first job that I had, really art related. That's actually not true. I worked one summer in high school at the gallery that is my family's gallery. But I was just sort of young and not knowing what I was doing. So I don't really...
And getting coffee. And
yeah. I was doing what I should have been doing, which was doing whatever needed to be done and not complaining about it. So anyway, then I graduated from college and I went to work at Sotheby's, and I was in their floater program, as it's called. I don't know if it's still called that. But anyway, you're basically an intern and you go anywhere to any department, anywhere in the company that needs an extra pair of hands for a day, a month, 6 months, whatever it is. So I actually started out in data management, which I loved because I'm a Virgo. And so they would give us these enormous printouts of all these client names and accounts that had been entered multiple times because of one little spelling mistake or anything. Anyway, this is sort of boring. But so we were consolidating those. It wasn't even in the main building of Sotheby's. So I did that for about 6 months. And then
that's a great way to get to understand every, part of the auction house, right? Being a floater.
Totally. I mean, first of all, they weren't going to put me in Impressionist in modern or contemporary. They wouldn't even put me on that side of the building. And so I got to learn sort of the ins and outs of other parts of it. And frankly, the takeaway from data management is it's important to be organized.
Why is data management always in the basement? I mean, really, always in the other. I mean, the data management people are people too. I mean, they're people too.
We were people too, let me tell you. So anyway, then I got transferred to Americana, and I did that for a while. I was a floater, American Furniture, American Folk Art. And then I ended up being an executive assistant to a co-division head. He was the head of 2 different divisions at Sotheby's. One was client service and one was decorative art. So the client service part was interesting because I would obviously talk to all different kinds of clients. You know, I remember bidding on a American clock up to $8 million or something crazy. And I just remember being like, everyone knows this is a clock, right? I mean, it was so out of my expertise. It was very foreign to me, but I was, sweating and it was very stressful. But
so the client would say to you, listen, I want to take it. I'll take it all the way.
So I was on the phone with this client. So, and you have to bid at the right time. You don't want to get on the wrong foot, as they call it. Your client will usually give you an idea, but sometimes they just go rogue and you don't know how far you're going to go. But if they give you an idea, you have to end at the number they tell you to end on. But if you're on the wrong foot is sort of the lingo for it, then you have to somehow get to the right amount. So in other words, if the thing is selling for $50 and your client only wants to go to $50, but you bid $45, the next bid is $50, and someone else bids, then you're like, you're sold done for what you wanted to pay, but we didn't get it, which is your worst nightmare. So
that's probably, though, that training is something that you obviously taken with you. It was
very helpful. It was very helpful.
Right? To having that, because you're probably doing that in some capacity now, which we'll get to later. But right, I would assume you're doing that for clients now.
It was all good. Plus, it was fun to be at a big company. I mean, there was, a lot of other young people that worked there. It was fun to sort of commiserate on, the way people treated you or what kind of things you were doing
behind the music.
There's a whole behind the music, which will come out TBD
another time when we're off microphone.
The record. So anyway, that was sort of how I got my start. And then after a couple years, my father said, I think it would be great if you came to the gallery now. You've gotten your feet wet and you've got some work in outside of the family business. And I think, you can start to really learn a lot here. And so come on over. So that's what I did.
And then when you came over, did you sort of, it's probably then to kind of learn the ropes of what was already happening in the gallery, but you didn't have, or maybe you did have an idea of what kind of art you wanted to focus on, or what kind of new artists you wanted to look for?
Yeah, no, I didn't know any of that. I mean, I feel like the first couple of years, I just sort of sat there listening because there was a lot to take in. It was obviously very different than the auction market, and it was very small. I mean, there was only probably 10 employees at the time. And most of them had known me since I was, 5 or something. So there was a bit of a easing in process and just sort of sitting back and listening and learning.
So the gallery's coming up on 100 years. How long have you been working there now? I mean, it's got to be...
I've been working there since 1997.
Okay.
So, I
was trying to do the math on that. But you and I think we've talked about what our SAT scores were. So I think that didn't flow as naturally. A long time, over 2 decades.
There are different ways to be smart, Leslie.
I mean, you and I we're in that category. But what do you think? I mean, the reputation of the gallery is unparalleled. It's one of the most well-known preeminent art dealers in the world. What do you think is the secret to Acquavella's success?
I think selling quality works, having exhibitions that are museum quality so that people can look at an artist in depth all in one place and really get a sense for what is the best that you're looking for from that artist, which can obviously mean several different things depending on the artist or the type of work or what have you. And, selling good quality things and being sort of honest and respectful of the art and the clients, and just that's sort of been the program for a long time.
Well, I think probably the trust piece, right, of you're building that legacy, which your dad and grandfather were known for. Knowing that they're being advised well, they're getting a high quality product. You mentioned so tell me that process. So when you're when you're having one of your shows, which you have often, you're curating sort of the things that you think are the finest work among that artist that you represent.
Yes,
right?
or amongst an artist that we deal in.
Okay.
So a lot of the art we deal in, the artists are no longer living. And so you rely on books and museums to really know that artist's work very well. And then in the case of the show we have right now, which is a Pierre Bonnard show based on sort of the later years of his work. And so that is, we've placed a lot of those works over the years. And so we were able to borrow back from private collectors and then also some institutions to put together a comprehensive show of the sort of last 30 years of his painting career. And ironically, the first show that my father ever put on when he went to work at the gallery in the 50s, he started there in the 50s, but the first show he put on was a Pierre Bonnard show in 1965. And that was the first time that I think certainly that we had ever done a color catalog. And I don't think another gallery had actually ever done a color catalog.
Oh, stop it. So that was kind of a new
that was sort of a new thing. And so he just sent it out to sort of the wealthy people that he had heard of in New York, Mellon, Rockefeller, people like that, Dorrance, the Campbell Soup family. And they came in and started buying these Bonnards, which he had gotten from the Bonnard estate, but he had passed away in the late 40s. And that was sort of his first big foray into the art world and his first big success, really.
Oh, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I did, I do some research before I do these podcasts. And I did, even though it felt strange researching you, since you're one of my dearest friends. But, it's interesting because your grandfather's focus was old masters, right?
Correct.
And your dad's focus, I think, or he was Impressionist art, was where he was going to carve out his niche. And you and your brothers, Nick and Alex are both also involved with the gallery, obviously, and you all work together. And contemporary art is the three of you are focused on that, or you're particularly focused on that? Or
we've just tried to broaden what we deal in because it just brings in more people. So we have not shifted away from Impressionists and modern, which has really always been our bread and butter. And that's really secondary market, as that's called. But also we've incorporated, and I mean, my father started to do this as well, but post-war American abstract expressionism, pop, things like that, just to sort of stay current. That sort of, work from the late 50s, 60s. I'm talking about 70s. And then we have added sort of living artists that we represent and do shows with. Because, we just figure the more clients we have, the better, and the more different types of art you show, the more people you bring in.
Yeah.
And a lot of our clients have started, not a lot, but younger people like ourselves, or how we used to
ourselves. We perceive ourselves.
When we first started working in the business, living in New York, and we had apartments, and we wanted to put some art on the walls, and obviously we couldn't put what we were dealing in or what the gallery was dealing in on the walls necessarily. So we started buying some younger things from other dealers, and that's sort of how we started dabbling and getting to know who the artists were and who we like to live with, and our friends were kind of looking for work. And so that we sort of started exploring, younger, and they're younger career-wise, I would say. And then as a result, a little bit, less expensive. So it was a little more attainable for people just starting out. And so that's sort of how that
How do you go about, though, finding your new artists?
I mean, it is totally random.
Yeah.
You see something, you like it, you see it at another gallery. an artist that you like mentions to you about another artist they like, it can really happen anyway. Or you figure out which galleries have programs that you like and you've been buying from them. I mean, I'm almost talking as a collector now, but also as a dealer. But there's certain galleries whose programming you like, you've bought things from them. They seem to have a good eye. Their artists go on to the bigger galleries and then on to, museum shows and museum collections. And that's really a good way of doing it also. But it can be even less scientific than that. I mean,
is there anyone that's like your like major, the one that you feel like was your greatest find, maybe hardest to find or most interesting find? Or
so a lot of the artists that we started representing a few years ago were already well established. I mean, Wayne Thiebaud, Miguel Bartholo, Damien Loeb, Tom Sachs, like those are all pretty well established artists. We have started having shows. We did a show in connection with this curator, Todd Bradway, who had done a book called Unnatural Nature, which was a landscape painting book talking about already sort of mid-career, late-career landscape painters and showing the new and up-and-coming, and that book the new and up-and-coming landscape painters. And that book came out in 2017. So we had this idea, 2017 or 2019, we'll check that. We had this idea to...
I'm not going to hold you
to bring that book sort of not only to life in an exhibition, but to update it. So to add in who in the last 5 years had sort of come to the surface and caught his attention. And so we did a big show between our two spaces, one in New York, one in Palm Beach, Florida. And out of that, we got to know a lot of younger artists.
Remember this. I remember that you did a catalog around that.
We didn't do a catalog because the book existed.
Oh, the book, but there was something that you did recently with you described that because
we've since had a show with an artist who I'm a huge fan of, Nicole Wittenberg. We did a catalog for that show that was in Palm Beach. That's probably the one.
That's the one. Because I remember there were a couple that, talking about putting things on your walls that are within your price range. I felt like there were some great things, and then they were already sold. I mean, I think they were sold before the show even. Right?
Yeah, she's very, very popular. And she's great. She's a great painter and she's a great person. And I always think it's easier to work with people that you like and get along with. So that's another thing I look for.
Yeah. And how does that there's probably a conversation. I mean, you're almost representing that deal, or you're almost there. Would it be fair to say or describe it as a sort of the agent of the artist when you represent them? And then as part of that, are you saying we agree that we'll do shows, we'll produce a catalog? Is there any kind of formula to that, or is it all just kind of based on it's specific to different artists?
It's sort of specific to different artists, but certainly most artists want the same thing. They want the shows, they want the exposure in different art fairs, if they're, if you do the right fairs, right. Kind of thing, because those have a very broad audience. And then they all want museum exposure. So they want to show at a museum, they want to be in museum collections.
Right, because that actually builds their brand, right? And
yeah, it's almost like it's almost like a stamp of approval.
Right. And then what is that process like? You go to the curator at the museum and have to kind of pitch why this art is important.
It is incredibly difficult. And I mean, I don't even really want to speak to this because there's so many parameters in place right now that make it very difficult to get works into institutions. And there's a lot of different ways that people go about it. Sometimes the trustee will buy it and donate it to the museum.
Okay.
Sometimes the museum will buy it itself. Sometimes the artist gives it. So there's all different ways
But even just being in a show, right, at a museum and knowing that the museum has deemed that work, appropriate or at the level that they would show it, right?
Absolutely.
Without even having to purchase.
Absolutely.
So how do you... Okay, so a lot of your clients are friends, and you have friends who are clients. people come to you and say, I want to build an art collection, and they want to do it from they want to collect things that they like, that they love, and they also want to collect things that they think have value. How do you help them navigate that? Or do you just, I know that's not I wish you could see her face right now. It's just, I just asked her, like, why is the world round? Maybe it's just it's a big one.
Well, no, of course that is what we try and do for people and have been very good at, and continue to be very good at. But it is very difficult to assure someone that things that they buy are going to go up in value, which is what many air quote collectors these days are looking for. It's definitely changed a lot. Art is without a doubt an investment asset at this point. The numbers are such that, yes, of course, it's great if you can love it, but most people these days really just are looking to find another way to invest in an asset class that is liquid and mobile.
Well, because also it's right. It's global, as you said. It's mobile. So that's really interesting. So you might have people come to you and say, I just love that piece, and I'd like to build a collection around that artist because I love that artist. And then you may have people who come and say, I just want to really, and you understanding the market can help advise them on what type of art and or what artists you think are kind of on the rise. Right?
Yes. There's different kinds of collectors. There's people that just want the big, important names that everyone has heard of, and they want, the big, colorful examples. I shouldn't say colorful, but sort of the big, obvious examples is more what I mean. So that, when people go to their house, they know what they have, kind of. And that's dumbing it way down, obviously. But, when you are putting tens of millions of dollars into an individual piece, it is understandable that people want
to display
it. Well, to display it, but also to have it, be an obvious example of what you want from that artist.
Right.
Right.
That's what you're saying.
So, but then there are collectors that want to own 10 paintings by that artist, and they can have the slightly more esoteric version of something because it rounds out their specific collection that highlights all of the amazing things that Picasso did in his career, for example. So there's different ways to go. Some people just want one of each thing that's really a great example. It looks great. And then some people kind of have a more intellectual deep dive that they do into artists. And all of that is great. And then some people want the new, hot, speculative young thing, and they can buy hundreds of those, and they can be right 30% of the time. They can be right 80% of the time. But it's it's a little bit of a gamble in that more speculative, younger market.
So on the idea of art being something that's it's portable, it's mobile, it's global.
It's not that portable. It's portable, but you don't throw it in your handbag.
Well, but if you're an oligarch on your yacht and you're moving around because your yacht's about to be seized or whatever, and we can obviously edit this out if this is inappropriate talk. But if they have whatever, that's, I guess, and there's also this, when you talk about the Gardner Museum heist, right? And where that art goes. If you have, if you have a client that's like, I only want to collect Degas or Picassos or these, art that obviously is worth tens of millions of dollars, and is part of it sleuthing down or trying to track down where this art is.
That's a huge part of it.
Right? And who owns it? And I guess there probably are some parts of the world where it's, it's harder to, I don't know. I don't know how it works. That's why I'm interviewing you.
I'm waiting for you to stop talking so I don't talk over you.
No.
My friend in there is very concerned. Aaliyah. Yeah. Anyway, that is the advantage of having been in business for so long. So decades and decades of selling work to different collectors all over the country and the world, then when someone else is looking for that painting or that type of painting, you know where it is, and you can reach out to the person and say, look, I have a new client. Do you want to sell this? It's worth this now. And, they can make a decision. But knowing where they are is a huge part of it.
And then with probably the same thing goes for auctions, right? And you all are bidding on, let's say you have a client who's a collector of whatever artist, and that's coming up in whatever sale. There must be some, what did you call it? The
ending up on the wrong foot?
I was in the ending up on the wrong foot. So there's a strategy, obviously, to that, or you talk to your clients ahead of time and say, I just saw this coming out, Sotheby's auctioning off this, or this is in this estate. This might be of interest to you. And then and they're obviously probably competing with other galleries. There aren't that many in your, neighborhood, but those that are, that's probably, a whole process and area of your expertise as well, trying to kind of navigate that, right?
Yes. And we will bid for clients and we'll help them sell things at auction if that's the best solution for that particular work. And navigating that process can be, more complicated than it seems. So it's just helpful to work with someone like us who knows really the ins and outs of both buying and selling at auction.
And then what about, so for someone who's interested in collecting, they love art, but they're not in a position to buy something necessarily from Acquavella or another sort of top gallery. Where would you, a teenager or a college student, or I don't know, or someone else who's just looking for, depending on what their price range is. I mean, is it going to fairs? Is it going to get galleries?
Going to fairs is a great way because you see 100 galleries or more all at one time. So you can kind of see what booth you're attracted to, what aesthetic from each gallery you seem to be drawn to, and then you can kind of follow their program. You can also see a lot online. I mean, I would never tell you that looking at things on a screen replaces looking at them in person. I, in particular, feel like looking at work in person is hugely important. For me, it's hugely important. I have a hard time buying things that I don't see in person, although I do it occasionally. And so that's a really easy way.
Is there a site, or how would you... That's a kind of a go-to that curates or looks for kind of up-and-coming or younger artists?
I wouldn't say that it curates it, but there's a site called Artsy.
Okay.
It's very comprehensive and has a lot of different work on it. Many galleries list works on there, and you can see what shows are happening and what gallery. You can go by gallery, you can go by artist. You can get a lot of information that way and see a lot at once. And then, of course, you can go to the different neighborhoods. I mean, if you live in New York City, you're in luck because you can look at a lot of art all the time. You can go to Chelsea, you can go to Tribeca, you can go to the Lower East Side, Upper East Side. There's plenty of places that have sort of clusters of galleries. So you can go and see 3 to 12 or 20, depending on what neighborhood you're in, all at once, in a couple of hours, which is a great gift for learning.
Oh, yeah. What about, so the fairs, right? There's Miami.
Well, there's 3 different brands of,
okay.
I mean, there's fair people. There's 1 million different brands of fairs, but the sort of big conglomerate fairs that people really follow and aspire to show in, I would say, is the what's it called? Basel, Art Basel. Which is in Hong Kong, Miami.
Oh, so that's its own brand.
It's its own brand.
And then they
Hong Kong, Miami, and now Paris. They bought Fiac, so now it's called Paris Plus.
Okay.
And so that's, I don't think they have another one, but I might be blanking, so we'll look that up. And then the other big brand is Frieze. So Frieze has London, New York, Seoul, Korea, and I think just those 3. But again,
and then do people, is there a whole process? I mean, obviously galleries, right, have booths at those fairs, but is there a committee or something that decides which galleries
yes,
are
there's
there?
an application process. There's a committee made up of dealers that does the selection process, that figures out who's going to go where within whatever space that fair is in, whether it's a convention center.
Oh, interesting.
So they map it all out, and you apply for a certain booth size, and these people decide if you get in or not.
Oh, interesting. And then anyone can go? Anyone can buy a ticket?
Anyone can buy a ticket, but the first day or two, depending on the fair, is usually a VIP day, which is invitation only.
So, okay, any favorite stories, or I know the great Steve Wynn story with your dad. Is there any, which you can certainly tell because it's amazing, and I think it's public, so it's not like a...
I know
anything
it's
that's
been
not
told
known.
for
so
sure.
maybe it's too old to regurgitate. But what about any other great stories of art that purchasing or clients losing something?
I should have thought about this before I came. I mean, there's a lot of good stories. You don't really, I would say back to your earlier question of one of your reasons for 100 years of success, I would say discretion is one. And
so
people really
people
really value our discretion, and always have. And so we're just one of the, you don't read about us much, and we try and promote our exhibitions, not ourselves.
Yeah.
So that's, you don't read about us much, hopefully.
So we'll keep the secret client stories then secret.
The secret client stories will be secret.
Okay, now what about technology and changes over time and how art is bought or sold? Obviously, the internet, you talked about Artsy and other galleries and artists being available online is one thing. My husband wanted me to ask you about NFTs. I find this very confusing. Maybe you can explain what they are and how it works, because I actually researched it, and again, not in the 1300 zone on the SATs. I had a difficult time really pinpointing exactly how it works. It's sort of to me kind of the crypto Bitcoin space. Kind of.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
So NFTs it literally stands for non-fungible tokens.
Okay.
And that could pretty much tap out my knowledge about it. No, I mean, I'm joking a little bit, but it's digital. My understanding is it is digital information that is on the blockchain, so that it is totally traceable and trackable.
Are people trying to buy art with?
Yes.
Okay.
So an NFT can be anything.
But at your level, no.
Well, one of our artists, Tom Sachs, who's very sort of cutting edge creative, and he does everything from sneakers to apparel to NFTs to sculpture to paintings to video to performance. And he made some NFTs of rockets, and you can buy different components of a rocket and assemble it, or just own the NFTs and then trade those. So you sell them, but you have to sell them on the specific site that handles that for you. It's, I would say, it is not something we deal in.
Right. Okay.
And one of our artists happened to have done it somewhat successfully, created them and created a market for himself. But generally speaking, we don't know that much about it.
Yeah.
But
I'm sure you can't see my expression with my look of confusion, though Eleanor is explaining it really well. Again, not my strength understanding of it, but it's interesting that that artists are pursuing other ways for them to create value in their art.
Or staying relevant with the next generation.
Oh, yeah, interesting.
I mean, that's really, I think, what a lot of this is about. And that's been one of the things that's been sort of an adjustment for galleries, and a lot of galleries. I mean, we used to have transparencies, which are clear film like almost like a negative, but it's a good image of a painting. And we would have to bring it to someone's house and show it to them and then see if they wanted to see the painting. Now you send someone an email. You hope they look at it because they probably get 1,000 a week. And it's very hard to sort of get people's attention when everything is coming to them through the same medium. I mean, their bank information, they communicate with their children, their art, their health, their shopping, everything comes through that phone. And so to stand out is a challenge.
Well, one of the ways, I mean, I think Acquavella stands out so incredibly is the catalogs that you produce, which are absolutely beautiful, and we are the lucky recipients of them. And when they come in the mail, we get very excited because we know we're going to be looking at beautiful art. But the books themselves are really spectacular. I mean, there's so much work that goes into, or it appears so much work goes into all the research around the artist. I mean, tell us about that. And do you and your brothers kind of take turns with different artists with their catalog, or do you all collaborate together, or how does the process work?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for the plug on our books because we work incredibly hard on them. And, books are really important, I think. And we keep doing them, even though it seems like maybe the future is going to be digital or AI or I don't even know what. But anyway, so our books, people do really treasure our books, which we appreciate. So basically for not each show, but depending on the show, we'll put together a publication and we usually publish it in conjunction with a nationwide or worldwide publisher. So in the case of, a few of our most recent books, we've worked with Rizzoli, for example, because then you get very good distribution and we don't have distribution.
Oh, so that I just assumed you were sending it to your client list and
we
friends
do,
list.
But then Rizzoli puts them in their stores and sends them to
really?
their...
Okay. And that's a new thing that you're doing.
Well, we probably started that like 10 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. So that just...
I've been a little behind and I'm following what's been going on, I guess, then over the past 10 years. But that's...
so that just gets you broader reach.
Yeah, of course. Well, they're such beautiful books. I mean, they're art history books, obviously, because you're giving the whole background on the artist. Pictures are beautiful. That's terrific. It makes sense.
We are very particular
reach your broad audience
about the images, and we color correct to within an inch of their life. I mean, it's very laborious and time consuming, but very important part of what we do.
Well, I love hearing the story that your dad was kind of the first one, really, in the 50s to do that, and seeing the success of putting one of those books together.
Yeah. I mean, you hope it works when people receive that in the mail. They read it and they look through the images and look through the show, and hopefully they've already seen. A lot of times the catalog comes out towards the end of the show because it takes a long time to go through all those motions that I mentioned, the color correcting, the editing, and all of that. And then the printing takes a while. So up until the show opens, you're not maybe totally sure what's in the show, or if, some of the paintings aren't finished, if it's a contemporary painter. So they come out sort of after the fact, but it's another reminder of a show you have on, or another great show that you just had. And so it just sort of keeps you at the front of people's minds, which is good. And
then how do you, for artists that are not living, that you represent, I'm sure you have all the kind of archive materials or materials about kind of the historical background on those artists and the art, but do you work with any art historians, or do you not need to do that? We
usually do work with art historians on our big loan shows, we call them, where we borrow works, and generally things aren't for sale. We borrow from institutions, private collectors, and then we have an art historian who either writes an essay, or a couple of art historians who write essays, or a curator, or sometimes the person is the curator and writes the essay. And that, just gives it another sort of perspective and another great name attached to the publication, which just helps broaden its desirability.
Yeah, and it's giving it that other kind of stamp is not probably the right description, but you're talking about having a piece in a museum or having, part of an important show.
It's another important name associated with an artist or the publication or and both.
So COVID happens.
I heard of it.
So many of our friends, the smarter among us, went south, where the weather was warm and some restaurants were open sooner. Acquavella moved down to Palm Beach.
Well, we didn't move. We opened a space down there.
That's what I meant, I guess. So Acquavella opened up its another gallery down in Palm Beach. Will you talk about kind of that process or the thinking behind it and how that's gone? And I know.
Sorry, my back is killing me. These chairs. Not your fault. Yes. So that, COVID was a crazy time, everybody knows. And I had been out in Long Island for the spring of 2020 and just felt like there was no end in sight. Things were not getting better. And New York did not seem to be opening up in the way that you need it to fill your space with people looking at art. And so we sort of felt like Florida was, a place where things were open for business and
I bet you a lot of your clients
and a lot of our
down there.
A lot of our clients were there. A lot of our clients were there, and a lot of, people that we knew or didn't know that well, or people we didn't know but we knew of. A lot of them were down there. So we went to Samantha Perry, who is a friend, and looked at some space in the Royal Poinciana Plaza in Palm Beach. And obviously, this is the short version. And it was us and Sotheby's Private Sales and Pace Gallery who decided to go. We thought if we went as like a group of three, it would make us more of a destination. And so we worked together. I didn't
realize that they're also in there too.
Yeah. So we worked together and found spaces that worked for the three of us. And we opened in November of 2020. It was pretty quick. I mean, we went down there basically in August to look at the spaces and kind of just did
that is so smart.
Very quick kind of build out on, ours was a clothing store before that. So, we just covered the shelves and moved on in, and it was great. I mean, artists were very excited to have shows. Yeah. People were very excited to look at art. Yep. It was great to have, secondary market shows. People wanted to see those, and it allowed us to sort of continue doing business during basically the entire pandemic, which was really great. And people really the local community really appreciated it. And people came from all over. I mean, they came from Miami, they came from Boca, they came from Tampa. I mean, people really made a point to visit because they were so starving for kind of that gallery, different show buzz.
Is there it's probably too soon to know, but are you seeing any change in kind of artists' work coming out of COVID? Or I'm assuming they were all holed up in their houses like we were, but they obviously had probably more stuff to do than those people who don't usually work or have gallery studios in their houses and stuff.
I mean, a lot of artists that I know and talk to kind of liked COVID. I mean, not to make light of it. Obviously, it was terrible, and a lot of people suffered tremendously, but they liked the respite from life and all of the responsibilities that one has socially and business-wise. And they got to just be in their studio and not leave and just work the whole time. And the artists I know absolutely loved it.
And did they feel like the subject matter of their work or was there any kind of melancholy, attached to it? Or?
It depends. I mean, it depends on the artist's circumstances. Right. Some were alone in their studio, which is obviously not ideal. And some were with, family at their favorite place, making work that reflected their quality time. Right. So it's very artist specific. But I mean, the only thing I mean by this is that having that ability to work sort of 7 days a week uninterrupted for months on end was something very unusual to most artists that I know. So it was a great reminder of kind of they love what they're doing and they just want to be able to make art.
I love the artists commenting too that they liked having like the quiet time, or some people found it to be probably restorative with their work. I mean, my husband, who you know very well, says he'd like to live in phase 2 of COVID, which means just small dinner parties with people that he already knows and likes. So I can certainly relate.
How quickly we've forgotten.
I mean, well, what some would give to go back to phase 2. So some people listening, I think, probably either know of people who are in family businesses or have worked with family members in different capacities. Obviously, your family has been able to run a family business successfully. What do you think are sort of the secret ingredients there? Or what's your advice for others? I mean, many of us can barely get through a Thanksgiving. I'm always so impressed by how close you all are and how well you work together. And
yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't know. We get along incredibly well and we respect each other. We listen to each other and we support each other no matter what, which I think is a huge part of it. And we all have different things that we're good at. And so sort of the different things we do on a day-to-day basis has all happened kind of organically because there are just certain things that some of us clearly enjoy more and are better at than others. And it's miraculously worked out well. And frankly, as the art world has exploded in the last 30 years, 20 years, 30 years basically, which is just unbelievable. But anyway, thank God there's 3 of us, frankly.
Yeah.
Because there's, tons of travel to do. There are clients all over the world. There are shows to see, there are artists to see, and it's really great to have 3 people. I mean, my father, of course, does it too, but he gets to really choose what he does.
Do the 3 of you have to decide together about a new artist to represent, or do you just kind of each have your...
we always talk about it. I mean, it's always we always sort of agree or agree to agree.
Yeah.
And so we don't do things without the others sort of okay or enthusiastic, let's do it, or something of the sort.
What about, it's my last question because I've kept you here for too long. It's pouring rain out. I mean, if you knew, it's true love. It's true love that you came down here. I mean, it's like we are in really kind of downtown. I thought as I'm sitting in traffic, I'm like, oh, what am I going to do? It turns out that we bought too many Billy Joel concert tickets tomorrow night. So I was hoping I could give Eleanor some concert tickets, but she has another engagement tomorrow, an art engagement tomorrow night.
True. We are back and in full force. The art world can't have enough parties, it seems like. Parties, auctions, galas, benefits.
Do you feel like there's more coming out? I mean, is it just people are trying to do catch up? Or is it just the same schedule? It's not.
I think it might be the same schedule. It just
we're not used to it. Yeah.
Just oppressive.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No,
So, but anyway, I'm doing it with a smile.
Like future of art, we know about art, and can describe the NFTs, but is there any kind of, do you think, is it more, and what is the term I'm looking for? Not sculpture, but, kind of the more interactive pieces or, physical things that you're experiencing? Is it just, you think you're going to see everything?
I think we'll just see more of everything. I mean, I don't think oil on canvas is going to...
Right.
It's not going to go away because it's a part of art history. But I think we will see sort of more and more things that you and I would call sort of out there or...
Like it's experimental.
Yeah. Because, I mean, we just don't even know what's going on. We don't, I feel like it's very hard for me to anticipate technologically what is possible in the world because I barely understand what's happening as it has already happened.
Right. We could barely figure out. Well, we put our headphones on, but we did stare at each other to make sure that they were working. But I think AI might. I mean, there could be all kinds of influences, right? That you can't even
AI.
see.
I think in a year we're going to be like, remember when we didn't have. I mean, I don't even know what it is, but I think it's all happening very fast, and it is over my head for sure.
Well, I love you dearly. I desperately appreciate you coming down.
Thank you.
I learned a lot. I know our listeners will learn a lot. And it's just so interesting to hear kind of process and how you sort of the breadth of the whole art world and how it works. And nobody does it better. Nobody does it better.
Thank you. That's, as Carly Simon said.
Thanks for coming, Al.
Okay, thanks.
A huge thanks again to Eleanor Acquavella for joining us on the interview. She's so terrific. I absolutely adore her, and I learned a lot about the art world. If you did enjoy the show, please subscribe, rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, follow us on Instagram at The Interview with Leslie. A new podcast is released every Wednesday. Until then, this is Leslie Heaney, and don't forget to join us at The Interview.